If you had the opportunity to do magic by doing sick-ass martial arts, would you do it? Would you take that offer? This is a very reductive view of the actual subject we're covering today, but I feel like a lot of you said hell yeah. Today we're talking about the Akashic Brotherhood, very monk-like martial artist mages. One thing I believe you are going to catch throughout this video, if you are really big into Mage, is the similarities with the Chakravanti. Now, I think it is intentional, because I wouldn't say either is a copy of the other. It's more that there is a common concept that then was spun off differently, but it's working off a lot of the same info and like root beliefs. Like the difference for the Chakravanti is that they had the influence of Greek funerary cults. Their beliefs are a little different. They just source similar stuff, largely because if you take it on its face, without any pure context, again, a little reductive. The Akashic Brotherhood are from China, and they take a lot of inspiration from Chinese Buddhism, while the Chakravanti take a lot of influence from Greek, but largely Indian religion and Hinduism. That's the real difference here. So, like I mentioned, the actual view that the Akashic Brotherhood are just Chinese mages is a bit of a misconception. They do not come from China, but they have a lot of similar beliefs, because that's just how that information in those religions spread. Though, if you take it on the actual Akashic Brotherhood's word, they are the oldest tradition in history. I don't, like, literally believe that this is true, but if I had to make a list of, like, the oldest traditions that you can trace, I'd put the Akashics pretty high. In my personal belief, I think that there wasn't one tradition that started at all. I believe there are probably a handful that started around the same time. This is just me spitballing with zero research. I've really seriously dug into this. But if I had to pick the 3 traditions you could trace that were the oldest, I would say Akashic is there, I would say the Verbena is there, and then maybe a combo of like Iteration X and what would become like the Society of Ether / Virtual Adepts, because the idea in the actual philosophies of inventing and advancing technology it goes back from the beginning of history. According to the Akashic Brotherhood, they come from Mount Meru, which is a thing in actual Buddhist like religion. Mount Meru is considered the center of the universe, and it is a place the most connected to like the heavens. You will be hearing that a lot, by the way. There are a lot of aspects of the Akashic Brotherhood that are just literally our real world like terms for stuff, or just a lot of our terms and beliefs in esotericism. There's a lot of this video that is just, if you know the history in real life, you just add a mage to it and you got the Akashic Brotherhood. But Mount Meru was the world at one point in very early history. It was just the center of everything. And on this mountain, enlightenment was taught by the celestial dragon, the tiger, and the phoenix. They taught the Do, spelled do, but it's pronounced dough, which means the way. This is the way to reach enlightenment and escape this cycle of reincarnation, your dharma, Saṃsāra, whatever you want to call it. As well, they taught that it is only through the mastery of the physical body that you can strengthen your mind. Because we are one being, you cannot just value one and neglect the other. You have to reach perfect harmony with yourself. Therefore, martial arts exists, which makes a lot of sense. There actually is a lot of just history around the idea of ritual exercise of some form. Martial arts is something that can go from like a legitimate combat sport to something that is very spiritual in nature. But eventually Mount Meru did start to shatter. It couldn't hold onto the world being the center. Our world started to come from it, and it's from this shattering that the Akashic Brotherhood, the early proto version without even the name yet, started to spread to like India, Nepal, and China, spreading their language and their beliefs, which is where we get like the start of Buddhism, of different forms of martial arts, of all of these concepts that spread throughout Asia. And this is like where the main key difference between the Chakravanti and the Akashic Brotherhood start, because while they both have the ideas of your dharma and of how important it is to keep the wheel turning, you just take it in 2 different directions. The Chakravanti lean a lot more into, I am a karmic assassin who will maintain harmony with the world by killing you. And the Akashic Brotherhood believes you have to maintain your personal karma. You cannot stain it, you cannot take actual like aggressive actions, you should live peacefully as a good example, and to make sure you are not staining your own soul. They believe that every single situation you are put in, there is an objective moral path that is the right path. Which is funny, because if you look at the history, the Akashic Brotherhood go through so many wars, like a lot of wars, which I feel like is more legitimate. What is a real philosophy if not very hypocritical? That's very human. But yeah, we see the spread of many different philosophies, many different groups. This is the origin of martial arts as a thing, which then spread out into many different types. Shaolin was actually started by a Akashic Brotherhood monk. Same with like Bushido much later, in a funny way, because there is a lore point with mages that is the Mongol invasion of Japan, which you might have known from Ghost of Tsushima, which is alt history. It didn't really go that way. The war was heavily interrupted by a huge storm hitting when the Mongols were trying to sail to Japan, and it's a little implied in Mage that a wizard might have done it. But it is that kind of thing. If you can think of something like from Asia, a different philosophy, a different belief system, some sort of honorable warrior code, all of these come from the Akashic Brotherhood, and it's why I have to kind of walk past their history a little bit. I can't detail it too much because it is so detailed. Like, holy shit, this is the densest tradition, and I believe it is better as a product if you can understand the concepts and the beliefs and who they actually are more than every single individual lore event. There is one really funny mention, of course, because like I said, this is the origin of Buddhism. It is implied that the Buddha was a wizard. He was a mage, and the enlightenment that the Buddha reached was literally Ascension, like from Mage. This is unless you trust the word of one 4th generation Methuselah in Chicago. There's a 1st edition book, it's known as the Succubus Club, and there is a guy who mentions that he reached Golconda before the Buddha, thus implying that the Buddha was a vampire. I think this is really funny. I highly doubt it's not true, because 1st edition handed out Golconda like candy, and like everything else, which isn't much, it's literally like a tiny mention in a mage book, kind of sounds like the Buddha is meant to be a mage. Now, I did mention that wars were just a very big thing for the Akashic Brotherhood's history. There's a lot. The big one I do want to point at, because I think it's the most important for their actual history, is the Himalayan War, which was a war against the Chakravanti. Before they even got the name Chakravanti, this is before they were like an organized group. Largely, the motives would be hidden for a long-ass time, but the Akashic Brotherhood didn't fully like their influence in India. Around like 900 to 300 BCE, there was a big-ass war. It lasted this long because of another concept we can bring up, reincarnation. The idea of your past life is very important to the Akashic Brotherhood, quite literally because they are able to tap into it. And as well, the Chakravanti are also able to utilize reincarnation, they just view it a little different. But it turns the war into a really weird stalemate where they kind of just stopped fighting around like 300 BCE, because picture this, you're fighting, you're killing some dudes. You kill a guy, 20 years later, a younger dude just starts rocking up, he's out to get revenge because he spent that years learning, training, and reliving his past life. He kills you, you reincarnate, 20 years later you track that guy down and kill him for revenge. Doesn't sound like a fruitful war, huh? But this is actually a source of beef that still exists in like modern day between the two groups. The way they are actually able to tap into their past lives is by something known as the Akashic Record, which is a real term. I will not say it is a real Buddhist term, because it's not. Are you ready for some esoteric history? Because this thing popped up in the 1800s with like the real beginning of a lot of different New Age and like mystical movements. Largely, it seems to source from one Helena Blavatsky, or Madame Blavatsky, a very pivotal person, and the person you can point at and blame for the idea of ancient advanced civilizations in Atlantis. Like, that shit is her. Also, this is completely true. I'm not going to say that she's a Nazi because I don't believe she was. What a start. However, the actual inner SS party did really like her ideas and spun it slightly to the idea of the ancient Aryan. There was like an actual belief in the inner workings of the SS that there was the ancient Aryan civilization and that there was a proto like Aryan race which would prove all their race science, and more and more and more actual like historically and archaeologically this was proven not true, so they simply threatened a bunch of archaeologists to, you know, publish the shit they wanted or else. Anyways, that's just it. I don't want to legitimize the idea of the Akashic Record because it doesn't really have historical precedence. But the belief, this spans for both Mage and for our real world version of it, the Akashic Record is a mystical, like unconscious mind thing. It is a record of the start of time to the end of time. It is built from the thoughts and emotions and memories of every single person and every single thing. So through extreme meditation and like practice, you can tap into this record. For the Akashics, it is literally like you can get a play-by-play of their entire history and like you can just find your past you and have all their memories, which is definitely why this history is so fucking dense, because they didn't forget any of it. But still, it is the goal of Ascension to escape this cycle of reincarnation. And as well, interestingly, they have a fun view of their avatar, because they believe their avatar is not a separate entity of some form, it is a part of themselves. So it is a calling, this innate calling a person has, telling them, trying to guide them to ascension and enlightenment. Instead of an outside being, it is yourself. So when you're strengthening your avatar, you're strengthening your own mind. This is also where I have no other way to put this. And I'm also not the guy to like really go into the ins and outs on whether or not this is chill or not. But the Akashic Brotherhood hits a thing White Wolf does pretty often, where there is the Asian option, and you can pick the option that's just Asia. I don't think this hits the same notes as like the Dream Speakers or Kavadi. I don't think it hits that, mainly because of how detailed everything actually is. It is just mirroring the real development of a lot of the different beliefs of the area. So it is way less like all these beliefs are actually the same, let's lump them together. It's more like they all share a very common root and a very common undercurrent of all their beliefs, which outside the Chakravanti, they seem to be pretty chill with the idea of these different minor belief changes. I think they just didn't like the political power of the Chakravanti, but still, I'm not the guy to tell you whether or not this is handled perfectly, largely because I can only tell you information that's surface level, shit I know and stuff you can get off Wikipedia. And personally, I feel really uncomfortable with the idea of proudly and confidently declaring something a certain way when I have no deeper knowledge other than the surface level of just the history and the beliefs. But eventually, they would open up a lot. Not to say they were fully closed off, but due to their area and the history of the time, every Akashic Brotherhood member was Asian, and whatever country that their personal belief came from, that's really what they stuck to, until we get to the 1400s with the 9 mystic traditions becoming a thing. And it's here I gotta bring this back, because you wanna know who approached the Akashic Brotherhood to offer them the seat of mind? That's right, can I get a hell yeah, Shazar? He's back. From the Cult of Ecstasy, if you don't remember that video, this guy ruled. He approached the Akashic Brotherhood and said, listen, the technocracy is becoming a thing. It's gonna make your life awful. We also know you're having some other issues. In China, there was a group known as the Wulong, who were a bunch of dragon wizards in China who were kind of dicks. They hated the traditions, and they hated the technocracy, and they kind of wanted to rule everything. When it was all laid out, the Akashic Brotherhood agreed to join. They joined up, they purposefully avoided the Chakravanti, just like, didn't look. They became buddies with the Kavadi, they clashed with the Celestial Chorus and the Hermetics, of course they did, but they fit in pretty well, and like I mentioned, they sit on the seat of mind. Mind is a very broad sphere. I think it's one of the broadest, because mind is like the power of consciousness. So it's less of like, I think real good, and more like, I can astral project, and I can get a really scary version of the ability. I can actually alter your brain and your consciousness. It is the route to go if you want to dip into the idea of being a psychic martial artist. But it's as we get into the modern day that I can say something that goes against normal mage type, and it's that the closer to modernization they got, the worse they had it, actually. Because World War II, it is easier in World War II to point out the mages that didn't side with the Axis in some ways than it is to not. Made worse because the Akashic Brotherhood spread from China and Japan, and during World War II, a lot of horrific shit happened to China from Japan. As well, the technocracy actually was the real pushers of Chinese communism, which a big factor of that is pushing away all of the beliefs the Akashic Brotherhood hold, so they didn't have a great time in their regions. And as well, as they got to the 2000s, they eventually uncovered a dark secret. Remember the Himalayan Wars, the motives of it? Turns out, it actually was started because one of the Chakravanti, they had a vision. And this vision showed, too, that all these groups needed to organize. And the war did that. It made the Akashic Brotherhood much more strong and centralized. It also formed what would actually be the real faction of the Chakravanti and the Ali Batin, which was a group actually that did sit on the 9 mystic traditions. They just left at some point. I will make a video on them. I'll make a video on them at some point later. But this is a secret they hid, because if you had to tell everyone that, hey, what's up? We started a huge war a while ago we swear it was going to make our fight against the technocracy easier. just going to cause more issues and cause more beef. Even more because there were a lot of different lies about what this was, so a lot of the members did feel like they just got fully lied to. Even worse, because they actually have the memories going back from that war. It's something they still keep hidden. The real bonus it comes with, like modern day Akashic Brotherhood, is that they are now way more peaceful, because they do genuinely hold these beliefs of nonviolence and peace and non-aggression. They hold it a lot stronger in their modern day, especially after the truth of the Himalayan Wars popped out. So first and foremost, I want to thank my channel members to make all these videos possible. Super appreciative. And a huge shout out to my top tier channel members, that being Eric Sheriff, Megas Cadron, Pork Chomp, The Funeral King, and Czar's Shadow. Thank you all so much. It means a ton. But yeah, I am sorry if you didn't like how streamlined this maybe felt. I think it's just more important to understand the beliefs. And also, it's just so fucking dense, man. I don't have the time. I can't fit that in. So I am sorry. But yeah, there will be more fun stuff on the horizon. So stay tuned, like, subscribe, do all that stuff. See ya.